Good evening, Divyan. Welcome to Digital Success Exchange, and thanks a lot for sparing your time for this meeting, for this exchange. Uh, let us start this conversation with a very general and common question around, but I hope this covers the entire AI framework in life insurance domain. You have been in this industry for quite some time. What are some of the areas that you see and feel AI is helping life insurance companies as a whole? Any business function specifically, or life insurance company in general?
Okay, so first of all, thank you so much, Deepak, and the entire team for inviting me over for this discussion. Obviously, it is very, very helpful to have a discussion with the like minded people and also a lot of enthusiastic people who are looking up for as leaders to help them start a career in AI and analytics as a domain. So, coming back to your question, yes, I have been working with the BFSI for almost 13, 14 years now, and specifically in life insurance. I have seen the world of data insights moving into visualizations, moving into insights, moving into analytics, and now into the world of AI and ML. And AI ML also can be broken down into maybe the descriptive, prescriptive, predictive, and now the generative AI. So, a very interesting space to operate in currently. And being into this business of life insurance, which is not a very, very pull driven market, it's a push driven market. So, the avenues of leveraging AI ML as a whole increases multifold because you really have to be very, very um, running through in terms of the agenda that who you want to onboard, why you want to onboard, and how will you mitigate the risk, and how will you make the journeys better and smoother for the customer. Every industry you will see there would be some peaks and troughs, and which will drive digital uptake or uptake of AIML as a whole. Insurance also had its own set of peaks and troughs. So, talking about life insurance in particular, COVID did it for us. While a lot of work was happening behind the curtains in terms of AI ML. So, for example, if I speak about Max Life, we created our first machine learning model in around 2015 when the world was even coming up with adoption of AI ML as a technology. So, but COVID is something that has really speed up things for us and also for the peers in the industry. I personally believe in the current times, the insurance industry is at a cusp of a large scale digital transformation. When I say digital transformation, it's being envisaged with AI ML at a core because nowadays these things cannot be talked about in isolation. Um, the modern day insurers are looking for leveraging these AI ML for deconstructing their entire business model around. It is a lot of sales driven business because the distribution focused. So, how do we reach out to our customer at a pace can involve better with our customers? And that is what is going to define how well you are embedded into the businesses. So the entire customer centricity is being thought of in a reconstructed or a deconstructed way with AI at its core, be it processes around onboarding or maybe looking out for the right people till the times the policy is issued and also a claim or a maturity is successfully settled. So that's where the AIML is at a play when we talk about life insurance. But when I talk about, and we were also having a discussion before this, that in today's world, AIML cannot be seen in isolation. That's not the only skill that you need to have in order to be able to create intelligent asset or can extract out value from the entire life cycle of the business. You need to talk about digital, you need to talk about cloud, you need to talk about DevSecOps, MLOps, and lot of data engineering aspects also. All of these together will form a foundation layer, which will then feed into your intelligence layer. Having said that, I think this is not only true for any insurance or a life insurance company. Most of the BFSI and the other fields also are now shaping up in these particular thought processes only. Specifically for life insurance, if I have to talk about, with these foundation layers in place, AI, ML, DevSecOps, MLOps, and all of those things in place, the core that has been looked upon is how do we prospect better, which is intelligent prospecting. How do we enable our sales processes better once a customer is prospected? Then what kind of processes are we envisaging with the AI/ML intervention in place, which would be your world of customer onboarding? And because underwriting plays a very important role in life insurance, because at the end of the day, you are in a game of large numbers at play. It's a game of probability that we have made a business out of. So customer service is another domain which is quite generic to all of the domains or the functions or the industries that you will see, but it's very equally or rather more important than other industries also, because here the customer is your customer, and maybe the families, the near and dear ones, when a person unfortunately maybe passes away or something happens to them, then obviously the near and dear ones and the next of the kins becomes your customer, because those have to be serviced better. So it's not the person who is buying the policy. You have to think about the person who might actually be needing the money out of that policy if an unfortunate incident or an event happens. Hence the claim settlement and the maturity payouts is another area where AIML has a very significant role to play. So that's about it, because these are some of the core areas where we are working as Max Life Insurance, and also if I talk about other insurance in the, they would also be equally involved in looking after these core processes in terms of how do we embed AI/ML better.
Sure. Thanks, Divyan, for this information. You talked about COVID and underwriting processes and the risk assessment. Now, in this area, how has AI augmented the actuaries in better and efficient, underwriting process, risk assessment, more so when we are in this, age of COVIDs and the health
Hmm.
conditions, existing health conditions, chronic health conditions. How has AI helped the actuaries in this space?
So I'll try to answer this into two parts. Obviously, when it comes to life insurance, obviously the first thought process that goes around is that actuaries are the beneficiaries. But if you have to look at the entire life scale at large, actuaries are one who would be monitoring the experiences and creating maybe views on that and helping to create new and new products. That's where experience pool will come in. But it's the job primarily lies with the underwriter, who needs to monitor what kind of profiles are coming in, and how do we weed out the not so good profiles in terms of mortality or in terms of maybe the other risk which are on play when selling a life insurance product. So the world is divided into two: one who are the makers, which would be the underwriting and the onboarding teams who are writing underwriting a policy and bringing up a person on board for a life insurance company by selling a policy or by issuing a policy. Then obviously the kind of experience we see from that policy that will be leveraged by the actuaries to create new and new products, and also plan better in terms of what kind of profitability we want to derive out of it, what kind of pricing is required, a lot of things that the actuaries will do. So when I talk about risk assessment in particular, the world is more focused towards the world of underwriting. So so the question was around what kind of risk markers or what kind of interventions we are creating as a life insurance company to identify risk better. So the answer lies in the process. So before we go into what kind of interventions I'll be talking about, I'll just take a minute to explain what happens in underwriting. So underwriting is typically when a person applies for a life insurance. Underwriter or the underwriting process is determined to identify whether this profile possesses any risk. Now, the profile risk can be on the actual profile, the demographic attributes, whether a person is coming from a location which is prone to frauds and all of those things. Second would be what kind of medical or health persona that particular person has. And third would be the financial persona of the person. So these are broadly the three assessment criteria for issuing any policy when it comes to life insurance. So now Having understood that these are the three parameters, the interventions have to be defined differently for identifying each of the three frauds. So, for example, let's talk about financial frauds. If you are talking about financial frauds, or maybe the financial risk that we might be looking to cut down or might be looking to evaluate better, then things like financial evaluation would come into picture. Those would be backed by the vision AI techniques, which would be as basic as an OCR, and would be used to identify maybe what kind of financial information has been presented to us. If it's not in a non-digital format, then we will leverage OCR to extract information out, leverage out the transaction data, create a financial worthiness view of a customer in terms of what kind of balances are coming in, what kind of payment patterns a particular person is exhibiting. If it's a digital, maybe in today's world, a lot of movement is happening on the account aggregator front, so that you get a consolidated financial information for a customer, which is basis a consent. So if a customer chooses to give a consent, half of the work becomes easier, that we get a consolidated information. Then it's about painting out a customer's persona in terms of what are his credit debits, what kind of investments it's making, what kind of travel patterns are there, and all of these things we have created models in house to identify what kind of financial worthiness a customer will have. So that's from a financial perspective. Next is from a risk perspective, the persona fraud. So insurance as an industry is very, very exposed to the role of cartels. What these cartels do, fraud cartels do, they would try to impersonate a dead person. So that's the biggest fraud that we see, that a policy gets issued for a dead person, dead on arrival, or those kind of personas, where the person might be terminally ill or maybe dead already, and there would be a cartel which would be operating, will have some sort of vested interest. A lot of parties will be involved, and they will be able to create some documentary proofs also that this person is live and this person exists, and all of those things will happen. So this is one of the biggest area where we need to focus upon. For these, we have created interventions like pause wheel, liveliness, facial recognition, and all of those things will come into picture, along with lot of machine learning models which help in identifying anomalies in the proposal forms, the declaration, and the health profiles, and all of those things. So that helps us look after for the profile frauds or the profile worthiness of a customer. Third thing is around health. Again, health is a very, very well researched domain in these days. A lot of work is happening on those fronts, specifically with a lot of government initiatives around creating centralized health IDs and all. While we have not reached there where we can directly leverage some of these initiatives, but the work has already begun. But in absence of these information points being available directly to us, we have also created some ML and DL interventions from a health perspective, as basic as recognizing BMI, age, gender from a photograph, to as complex as identifying a diagnostic center fraud. So, while some of the frauds from a health perspective, some of the risk element from a health perspective would be focused around whether the person has a healthy lifestyle, is maybe disclosing an ailment or not, and all of those things. But there are also, like I mentioned, there are cartels which help in impersonation. There are a lot of diagnostic centers also might have some sort of vested interest in them, whether the person might not have reached for a test, maybe his or her twin brother or sister would have gone there, or maybe person who is not alive anymore. These kind of things happen. Or the diagnostic center, we would have seen this in our own regular lives also. When we get a test done, sometimes the report does not feel right, कि यार ये तो मेरे साथ हो नहीं सकता, मतलब these parameters look to be off. Then you get a test done from a reputed lab, and then you figure out that hey, इसमें तो the entire parameters are different altogether. So that's one of the biggest risks that we face as a life insurer, especially specifically in the term portfolios, because their medicals would have fair share of the entire incoming books. So we had to create some. So there a lot of proprietary work has been done by us, where we have created these solutions around diagnostic center fraud identification, and how can we assess the customer's health profile better based on the demographics and all of those things. Because some of you would have seen your reports, some of the parameters will look very generic, that if a parameter is this, if it is in this range, then you are pass, otherwise you are failed. But we see as a country also a lot of demographic dividend is there, and divide is also there. If you'll go to maybe a place where alcohol consumption is very high, the parameters will look totally off. The people might live a long life also, so I'm not commenting on that, but the parameters would look different, and there is a need to underwrite or maybe assess the health parameters differently. Hence a lot of work is required where we have created intervention. So those are the areas where I believe a lot of work is happening in the insurance industry, specifically on these three risk elements of financial risk, persona risk, and the medical risk.
Sure. Thanks, Divyan, for sharing those insights. Uh, Taking some excerpts from your, deliberation in terms of early mortality, in terms of assessing the financial worthiness of an individual, right? How is alternate data helping insurance companies take better decision? Because you would have your in-house data with you, but leveraging external data in terms of location based data, in terms of spending patterns of an individual, how are these alternate data helping insurance, life insurance domain predominantly?
Think that's again a very fantastic question. Like I mentioned, the idea is to make the journeys customer centric. Hence, the role of these alternate data points become very, very important. How do you cut down a proposal fill time is at the core of knowing more about your customer. Now, some of these data points will help you underwrite a customer better, which will also prevent your interest around the risk that associated with the profile comes in. So the role of alternate data is twofold. One is to obviously provide the customer a seamless experience. So, for example, leveraging a bureau by cutting down on the financial requirements. So those particular things are there as a process, that if you have a good bureau presence and if you we get a good estimated income from the bureaus, there would be a financial waiver which would be provided to you, which means that your time to process application will significantly go down, because you have to evaluate one lesser thing, the financial worthiness of the customer. So that's definitely there. Apart from these also, a lot of new transaction based players are emerging in our, I would not name, but some of these new age merchants, online shopping providers, and the data providers are also there, which also act as a payment gateway, which also help people in identifying what kind of financial worthiness would be there, by not sharing the data in actuality because privacy concerns are there, but they will give an indication that this person looks to be an affluent or not. So those can come in handy from a financial perspective. From a risk perspective, Deepak, I think insurance as an industry has a lot to look up from the online gaming space. So with the emergence of these new betting platform, while it's not legalized, but a encapsulated industry has evolved, which is on the online gaming, which involves financial interest and all of those things. So those companies are also making good ground around identifying device attributes, assigning a device ID to the instrument which is being leveraged for creating or maybe a gaming instance and things like that. So some of these things we are also working on. How do we identify whether maybe n number of policies have been logged on from the same device? If a device has been earmarked for any kind of risk in some of the other industry, how do we leverage that data better is something that we are working on. A lot of you also mentioned a lot of work happens around locational information, as basic as the locational affluency for leveraging it as a surrogate in our issuance process, to as complex as maybe using these locational parameters to know the whereabouts of your customer, whether they have reached, whether the medical test was done at a diagnostic center or not, what kind of reverse geo tagging can be leveraged for waiving off the address criteria, or maybe leveraging these for auto filling the form. So these kind of things are also being tried upon. In terms of the alternate data or augmented data, these are few areas where we think a lot of value is, like I mentioned, on bureau from a payment perspective, device IDs from a fraud perspective, and also some of these things. So, for example, as basic as lead getting generated at the VRs, nobody would definitely be awake at 2 or 3 p.m. to buy a plan. So there are patterns that you need to identify, and some of these alternate data points help you in getting there.
Sure, Devan. So we were talking about this fraud scenarios in insurance domain. Since COVID, right? A lot of things have gone digital. What are some of the areas where AI can help identify those digital behaviors of the applicants? One example I can give you, right, that I am filling a digital online application form wherein it asks whether I smoke or not, right? So the predominant tendency of an individual is you go and say yes, right? But you get the premium, then you realize that look, there are some areas where I have given clear information. Okay, I need to make some changes there, and then I can get my premium reduced. More so when these health tech companies they are coming up, they are not leveraging diagnostic assessment reports prior to giving the policies. So how can AI help uh, curbing these digital frauds or digital application frauds that is happening around?
I think that's a very interesting point of view that you have brought in, Deepak. See, like you mentioned, around if a customer has made a correct declaration or not, and he or she might just realize it at the time of the actual payment being done. For these kind of things, and because all of these things will also lead to a lot of missile complaints and grievances, which needs to be addressed, and we are a regulated industry, and obviously customer comfort and customer interest come at the center. So some of these things are very very essential to eliminate, so that mis-sell does not happen, customers interests are protected, and we are not actually selling a policy which the customer might not be requiring. So for all of these things, I think we have a process called POSV, the point of sale verification, which helps in identifying or maybe asking back the customer, hey, are these the things that you were looking for? Where the customer has to make a declaration, reading, going through that entire form. If it's a standard POSV or if it's a video POSV, then a video gets played and the questions are asked, and the customer has to again go through that journey and come and maybe confirm that, hey, this is what he was she was looking for, because that is very essential. And like you mentioned, some of these things were not possible without the role of AI. So, for example, while like you mentioned, customer might just say yes or no, there are tools available which can help in identify what is the confidence associated with which the customer is answering now. And some of these things give us a view into, hey, we really need to maybe call back this customer and get to know whether he or she really meant this. It might be a verbatim problem, it might be a vernacular problem, he or she might not be. So, how do we make these questions put up back to the customer in his or her choice of language? Again, AI has a role to play. So right from understanding the customer needs, replaying those needs to the customer, and making sure that the customer is now understanding and responding in the correct way in his language of comfort. A lot of AI goes behind the scene. While it might just look that I have opted for English, but how do you regenerate a different language vernacular from a source language is again AI at play. How do you leverage the speech in the video to see what kind of adherence to the question has been made by the customer? And if that adherence is low, then maybe involve a person in the process. Again, a lot of AI comes into the play. And first of all, identifying which customer should be sent to a video journey and which should be sent to a standard journey. Again, there would be some models which would help you in identifying these things. So from a construct point of view, a lot of sub interventions are at play when we see a process. As a customer, sometimes we might just feel that, hey, this is an added burden. I told you everything in the form. Why are you asking me this question again? But this is to protect customers own interests, so that at the end of the day they don't end up paying for a policy which they did not even intend to buy. The idea is that they know what they are getting into, because insurance are usually long term contracts. What you get into, you will pay for 10, 15, 30 years. Then after waiting for, maybe if it's a term, maybe waiting for 10, 15 more years, then you will be eligible for some sort of, if it's not term, if the savings, or then you will be eligible for some sort of maturity amounts and all of those things. So customer, it is to help customers. And obviously AI has a role to play. Again, with the advent of, like, the other portion was, how do you assess the customer's health better without, and maybe assess his fitment, and also give him a lucrative offer by knowing more about his health. So as of today, if we talk about, in a country like India, there was a not a lot of room for a decentralized or centralized information. No, information was mostly decentralized. Every hospital will have a health record that they will have.
Yeah.
Every hospital's different branch will have a different record of you. You might have a different patient ID in the same hospital in a different branch. So all of these things are there. So if you have to paint out a unified persona of a customer, you first need to have a centralized view of the customer, which is now getting solved by the advent of APA and National Health Registry. Once it will be in its matured state, what it will help the likes of health insurers and also the likes of life insurers like us is that we will be able to ping a centralized database with the customer's consent, obviously, in very beginning of the journey, know about his health, and if the health is good, we can give him or her a discount which would bring down the cost of insurance for that person without having to go through a tedious process of medical being done. That would be really non-invasive, knowing about your health patterns, which will also give us confidence about the customer's persona. Like it happened in the general insurance, all of those devices which came in, which used to give you patterns of driving, and lot of life general insurance companies give discount on basis of your driving patterns for the next year. This is a similar kind of ecosystem which will emerge for the life insurance also, once this ABHA and NHR reach its maturity. I think there is a lot of drive also from the government of India on getting all of those things done. The push will definitely help the industry evolve. Will definitely increase customers' power to buy these products at a cheaper rate, and will also help the life insurance in onboarding good profiles and ensuring profitability.
Sure, Divyan. So, uh, many a times, in the insurance companies, they come up with their advertisement tags saying we have 99% claim settlement ratio, we have 90% claim settlement ratio, and keeping customer centricity in mind. How has AI helped in this entire claims processing or claims automation journey?
I think we really take a pride because we are one of the leading firms when it comes, when we talk about claim settlement ratio. We really take pride in being at the top of the league, because at the end of the day, this is what is the epitome of your measurement of customer centricity, because this is when the customer would reach out to you for the product he purchased, or maybe his parents or maybe grandparents or maybe somebody purchased for themselves, and you are at the stage of getting those payout at the time of need. We really take pride in that. And like you mentioned, obviously AI really has a, it's not only words, because I myself have seen that journey, I've lived that journey and created that journey here at my company. So as and when you will strengthen your core controls, your confidence in settling a claim will go up. If you know that, hey, I have been able to weed out all or most of my fraud profiles upfront, then at the time of claim stage, the amount of due diligence which is required will significantly go down. How you are collecting information upfront and how you are using artificial intelligence to identify whether a particular persona has any associated risk. Can you document those risks, maybe ask more information from the customer upfront, so that you don't have to reject the claim at the time of, maybe whenever that undue event happens. So that's the core philosophy, at least what we believe in, that ensure that the risks are weeded off upfront. so that we don't have to uh, push the settlement time up for a legitimate customer. And that philosophy has helped us achieve a pole position when it comes to claim settlement ratio. Idea is to have due diligence better, leveraging all the things. And once at the time of onboarding you have made sure that this is the right profile we want to onboard, then be very very understanding of the fact that yes, obviously we are in an industry where products are designed where we assume that a certain mortality will come in. Now when that certain mortality comes in, again AI has a role to play. So for example, you will again have models which will be focused on which profiles to focus upon from a due diligence perspective, which are those claims which would require an investigation. So the idea is to keep the bucket of investigatable claims very, very limited and try to pay all those claims. So we are running against a bet, while I will not quote the number, but it's in really in days, not even in weeks, that we are gunning against, that we should be able to close a claim in so many days. So that's what we are trying to achieve. That's what uh, we all live for.
Sure, Divyan. There has been some, questions put forward by the audience. If you're happy, we can take, some of them.
Yeah, yeah, sure.
So the first question, which is coming again, we were, discussing prior to this call, regarding generative AI. How is generative AI fueling the usage of AI in life insurance domain? Number one. And second is, what are some of the ethical concerns or negative impacts of these generative AIs that they would have in life insurance domain?
So I think this is really a very contextual question, and everybody these days. So one of the good thing that generative AI and the likes of Chat GPT have done is that it has taken the AI from a couple of folks to the larger masses. Now everybody understands. Be a person need not be any more technical to understand how a Chat GPT works or how can they leverage the power of it. So that is what a good this particular advent of generative AI has done, while other avenues are also coming up on the vision generation, text generation is something which has taken up speech, audio, video, everything is being worked upon. Chat GPT took the world by storm. There are some generic use cases which, like any other industry, we are also pursuing, be it like document summarization, contract summarization, content generation. How can we generate a content better? So these are some of the common use cases which I think everybody is working on. Again, these kind of use cases can be solved by the commonly available technologies which the tech giants are working on, and it's better to use those technologies and leverage their offerings by wrapping it up with your layer of contextualization and using it to fulfill your use case. So the generic use cases can be very well solved by these. Um, again, there are risk of hallucination. You might just end up creating a content which might not make any sense but might look very very lucrative when you look at it. So obviously those risks will always be associated, and it's always going to necessitate some form of validation till the time that level of maturity is reached. But obviously it is going to cut down a lot of time and bring in a lot of efficiency when it comes to content generation as a whole. When I talk about life insurance as an industry, there are some specific use cases which I think the advent of these large language models is going to help us solve. So for example, how do you infer your products better and help your field force put all of these product knowledge in a summarized form for your customers, is one of the use case which is very very contextual to the life insurance companies. Product documents are lengthy, calculations are difficult for a layman to understand. How can we use the large language models to help our field force make it more comprehensible for our customers? leverage it for not only, so for example, a salesperson might have to answer a question as simple as why should I buy life insurance and not invest in gold, where a macroeconomic view might be required, a microeconomic view might be also be required. So it is that you need to understand your domain, and also you need to understand the ancillary domains also. It's very difficult for a person to have a know it all approach. That's where these large language models and will come into play, where it will help them summarize, gain quick information around the world, what's happening, what's the brief summary, which will enable our sales force to answer some of these questions better on the go, and will also help customer get at their concerns addressed. These are some of the things. And obviously we are working on a use case from an underwriting perspective, where we want to leverage the proposal forms and the other documents which are submitted, and extract the information from those and leverage a large language model to summarize it for a quick summary for an underwriter to take a decision. So that's one area where we are really investing on.
Sure. And, I'll take my experience in this, Divyan. So I have, two, three life insurance policies in my family, health insurance policies, but I would rarely go and read the policy documents, right? We wholly and solely depend on what agents would tell me. And this is where these large language models
Yeah.
would help this frontline sales force to make it more lucid, make it more interactive, and make it more in a layman's term to make the customer understand. Well said. We have another question which is coming from one of our audience, which says, is it possible that AI can predict which insurance a person needs? That means which insurance product a person needs, predominantly keeping in mind the fine line of difference between different products. Insurance products are very narrow. So can AI help in predicting or recommending what sort of insurance products one would need?
It's again a very interesting question. Usually, insurance companies have a product suitability matrix, which they reach out to for the customers to understand their insurance needs. Will take all of those inputs, fill up in a digital form, and that digital form will have a intelligence unit sitting at the back end, which will give out what kind of insurance will be most suitable for you. Why these are important? Because at the end of the day, if you take this decision making away from the human, it's also going to take away the bias. Because humans, as a sales force, as a salesperson, might be biased towards a product which might be, I'm not saying everyone is, but some of them might be biased towards the product which might get them the most of the incentive. To take away these kind of constructs for design, product suitability also, which makes the process very standardized and also intelligence driven. What kind of customers have bought which product? A person like you is buying these kind of products more. So these kind of intelligence aspects might be augmented with the product suitability matrices to help you get to what you know you need and what you might need. Because at times we also need to believe in the collective intelligence that hey, if I am a maybe 35-year-old, I don't know what to buy, but I might just take a decision basis what others are buying, like we do for Netflix, the collaborative filtering and the content filtering. So that's what the world of product suitability is also headed towards.
Thanks, Divyan. We are running short of time, so last question. In terms of usage of AI in life insurance business function, starting from customer acquisition to growth to retention. When it comes to retention, you have this claims processing, this is customer feedbacks, review analysis, and all those stuff. How would you rate these business functions in terms of what quantum of AI being used in each of these functions in a descending order?
I think whoever has asked this question, I suppose he or she is from the life insurance domain, because this is something that we really track in my organization. Every year we create a functional strategy. That's the first slide we begin with. We have X amount of processes, and what percentage of processes in a particular function has AI or ML footprints in it. So that's what we track. How are we progressing around on these matrices? While I will not name what kind of inroads we have in different functions, but at least in my view, I personally believe I will come from a need backward rather than what kind of on state today's state the kind of outlook might look like. Because what I believe is, if you can onboard a customer in the most efficient way, having knowing all the risk associated with the profile, your job is half done. Why I am saying that? If you know what the customer wants, if the customer is very clear of what he or she is opting for, and you eliminate the risk, then obviously the customer would be interested in the product. All your retention efforts will go down because the customer would be self interested in paying those premiums and everything. And if the customer is really really legitimate, and in case any undue event happens, then the claims processing will also be very easy. If a customer need and a company's need can be evaluated upfront, then all the other functions would look to be very very supportive of the fact that the customer journey is very very smooth and very customer centric. So I personally believe, the at least for the life insurance, it the success of AI or the footprint of AI needs to be very very focused on digital sales enablement and onboarding.
And that is where you filter out the good customers, or
Yes,
the potentially not good customers
yes.
at that very early stage. Thanks, Divyan, for your wonderful time. We are running short of time, so we have to close. Thanks for your wonderful time. Thanks for this wonderful deliberation, and we would love to host you the other time as well, on this topic, when we have more development in terms of generative AI. So the topic would be different there.
Yeah.
It would be more in terms of how generative AI is helping the life insurance domain. Again,
Thank you so
from the
much, Deepak.
IndusNet side,
Yeah.
thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for attending.
Thank you so much, Deepak, and thanks to all the wonderful audience for keeping the session interactive. Your questions were really good and very contextual. Because of time, we could not take them, but I am available on LinkedIn. You can reach out to me, and we can definitely connect there. And obviously, Deepak, we are working on generative AI, and maybe in couple of maybe weeks or months, I would have a lot to talk about generative AI as well. So definitely looking forward for the next session.
Sure. Thanks, Divya.